Good morning. My name is Kim George, and I'm a producer at Prairie Pictures. And today we are going to be talking about a new movie called 13 Minutes, which will be released coming this October 29th. Very excited about this release. Now, in the group, we have Lindsay Gossling, who is the director and writer of the movie. Very excited to have you with us, Lindsay. And Travis Farncombe. Is that correct?
Farncombe, that's right.
Okay. He's a producer on 13 Minutes, and he actually worked on the story with Lindsay also. So, and of course, Martin Lisius, who is the founder and cinematographer of Stormstock and Prairie Pictures. So let's begin with Lindsay. Tell us a little bit about the film.
So 13 Minutes is a story, an ensemble story about four families in a heartland town whose lives intersect over the course of one disastrous tornado day. It's a wonderful story it's a human story. It's a thrilling, exciting, disaster film, but it's also a human drama and shows really how human life is really intertwined with the natural world and natural phenomenon, specifically tornadoes.
Very good. So what inspired you to do this film?
So some time ago, Travis and I started talking about tornadoes and the possibility of making a tornado movie. And one of the things Travis can speak to a little more as well, but he does a lot of work with a company called Impact WX, and they spend, they're very concerned about people responding properly to weather warnings. And one of the things, we talked about all the different problems that they have getting people to respond, being, either people, they're out there Instagramming it instead of getting to shelter when the sirens go off, or they think, I'm not going to shelter. I know a tornado when I see one. Or they don't understand the messages because of language barriers or mixed messaging, and they get confused about what to do in the moment. And the more we talked about it, the more this world sort of evolved where we could ascribe some of those problems to human storylines. And so we ended up developing a world that is this sort of microcosm of global issues, and creating a very, very real, very relatable human problems that are in each sort of family or character's life is quite charged and reaching its own, climax on the day. And then this tornado will strike and destroy the world completely. The world will be leveled. And then, to explore how differences dissolve in the aftermath and people just sort of come together. It's a story of survival, social, emotional, and physical survival. And I think I hope anyway, that in the aftermath, we'll be left wondering how that world will be rebuilt and whether those human differences will evolve, and hopefully the world will be rebuilt better than it was before.
And I think to the question, like why we did it, there's a lot of fun tornado movies out there, but there aren't a lot of real ones. And so a lot of storm movies and severe weather movies focus on storm chasers, which you guys are storm chasers. I'm a storm chaser. But, when a tornado hits a town, hopefully it's not, storm chasers that are being hit. It's real people living their lives. And so we took the film there with them, which I think makes the difference. And yes, I mean, to your point, the event in the film, it's a Greensburg, it's a Joplin, it's a Moore, it's a Tuscaloosa event, where it's the worst case scenario, and we explore how people can survive through that.
What was the most difficult challenge that you faced when making the film?
Oh, every film has its own challenges. Every film is challenging to make. We had a large cast. We had a lot of locations. We did not have a lot of time. We shot the whole film in 25 days. And we weren't a big budget film either. So we also had to, find solutions to be able to achieve this massive storm and storm damage and aftermath and everything that we were determined to deliver. So coming together in that sense. Another factor was in fact the weather, because we were shooting in Oklahoma and we shot November, December for spring. And the first day of shooting was like 20 degrees and like sideways sleet coming across. And we had some outdoor scenes. We had a lot of breath removal. We had actors out there in t-shirts trying to pretend it's 80 degrees and really hot. And thankfully, like, their cheeks were all rosy from the cold, but we were able to sell it as heat in the end. But that was certainly challenging. I mean, I think probably in a funny way, the weather was one of our biggest challenges.
Yeah.
I would add that in post-production, when you're adding all of the visual effects and sound and those elements onto the film, definitely sourcing like every piece of sky footage that's in there. We did visual effects sky replacements to make sure that there's not a moment in the film that doesn't look and feel and behave like a real storm day. And so finding all of those absolutely bang on sky replacements was something that was essential. Another VFX challenge, the biggest VFX challenge for sure, was getting a realistic depiction of softball-sized hail smashing and bouncing. It was just something that took a lot of go-arounds and collaboration and iterations with the VFX team, and in the end, they did an amazing job. And then I would say this wasn't the biggest challenge, but I think it was the most important one. Was when you're making a tornado film, very easy to be heavy-handed with the storm and with the tornado. And I think that making sure that we stayed grounded in reality and realism and nature was absolutely like the most essential challenge that we faced as filmmakers, so that we give the audience a real tornado day, a real tornado disaster, and a real tornado film. Otherwise, it just would have, I can see how it would get goofy really quickly.
And I'll just add a tiny bit to that, but adding on to the original, when we first started talking about it, it was essential for the film to be grounded in the real world, but also for people to recognize what those sky patterns are doing on a storm day. And as someone who learned a lot about tornadoes from Travis and throughout this whole journey, you learn that this beautiful blue sky day can turn in an instant, and what you need to be looking for. And I hope that knowing it's a tornado movie and watching those skies very subtly evolve and change in the background over the course of the film will be its own dramatic tension that didn't need any augmentation. Like, it's scary enough in what it is, and then hopefully people will also learn a bit about what to look for.
That's great. I mean, you almost answered my next question, is what did you learn about storms while you had
so much?
I mean, there's a lot to learn, and I'm sure Travis helped you out a lot, being a chaser himself, that that helped along that path for you to see how storms do develop from just basically nothing and then develop into something amazing,
It has changed the whole experience from the point that Travis and I started talking, and we did so much research, and he showed me so many videos and photos, and the whole evolution of the storm day, which we stayed true to the evolution of the storm day on this type, for the specific type of tornado. I have never looked at the sky before. I just think in general, it was just a thing that is there. And now I look at it all the time. And I even, as I've become my own little spotter, mostly I've only spotted thunderstorms in the distance, but I'll text Travis pictures because we get tornadoes in Ontario. And again, there's not a lot of places to shelter often, depending on where you are. If you're up north or, in what we call cottage country, where people have holiday homes. And so I'll text him pictures. He said, well done. It's a bit of a downdraft.
There are also times when I'll get
you can stay on the dock, it's fine.
There's lots of times where I'm like, Lindsay, yeah, really good try.
Well done.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm fascinated now, and you're watching these patterns as the clouds are evolving and shifting, and I now cannot relax on a dock. So thank you.
Sorry about that. So some of the footage in the film actually came from Prairie Pictures Storm Stock, shot by Martin. How did that contribute to your film?
So, I mean, again, so much. The skies were so essential to have absolutely naturalistic and true to the realism of this day. And a lot of that was the opening thunderstorm footage and lightning. And it's the opening of the film. It's the first thing people see. It is spectacular in itself. And there was so much to choose from. I think too, we needed to pare back because we had so many of those forks shooting down and really choosing and selecting the moments. And Travis, spent a ton of time advising and making sure that the rate of cloud speed was accurate. It's everybody's instinct in film to speed it up to make it dramatic. But we really tried to avoid that.
Yeah, there were a
Travis
lot of
can speak.
lessons about pulling back away from time lapse for sure. That's a good point. I think with the lightning footage, so the bulk of the storm stock footage does show up in our opening scene, as Lindsay alludes to, which is a really dramatic lightning scene. And that was actually the hardest scene to achieve kind of a consistent storm character.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately we went kind of to one place, and we were, it took a ton of trial and error to see what pieces fit where to get that right. And I can tell you, like, hundreds, if not thousands of hours were spent sourcing storm footage and stock footage for all of our sky replacements. And if it's in the film, it's because it is the best characteristic fit for that moment of the film. So that was just absolutely essential.
Yeah, so getting to that, Martin, can you just describe the specific footage that was used in the film and what was required to capture all of that?
I have a little storyboard here with the cuts that were in the film. And it looks like, as they were saying, that it was a little bit more emphasis on real-time footage and to get away from time lapse, because of course that can conflict with the movie, which is shot in real time with people, obviously. We have some cloud-to-ground lightning in Kansas and cloud-to-cloud lightning. We have a couple shots of a big thunderstorm with lightning in it at dusk, shot at dusk, and a nice big corn, or actually it's a wheat field. It's a golden wheat field with modest clouds over it at sunset. Right around sunset, and all of this was shot in 4K. Looks like a couple of the shots were shot on a Sony FS7, which is a 4K camera, and then a couple shots on an Aeroflex 35.3 motion picture film camera, which captures lightning very, very well. Real-time lightning very well. So,
if I could speak to that, I'd say, so another thing that we should say is we couldn't, when sourcing the footage, sometimes you come across some great footage that seemed to work, but the quality wasn't there. So you do need a certain resolution. You do need it shot by a certain type of camera. Really interesting, your point about Kansas and a lot of our footage, it's probably coincidental. The film takes place in Oklahoma, but I think your Kansas footage, I'm guessing a lot of it is Western Kansas, where it's kind of the ultimate like high plains, big sky. And that for sky replacements was really helpful for us because it means that there's not a lot of trees or topography in the foreground that make it harder to work with for the VFX team to get it into the film. So those were the reasons that film was also kind of essential for us.
So the real life city that this is kind of based on, isn't it Reno location type location?
That small town, small plains town. And when we came to, we're doing our location scouting and came to El Reno, it was just absolutely perfect in terms of the size and the feel of the downtown, and you know, big enough that you believe all these characters don't already know each other. It's not that small a town, and big enough that, you know, this will be a really tragic event for the town and these people, but not so big that it's a city.
And I think it worked so well conceptually too, because I mean, the storm chase community, the weather community, all knows El Reno for its kind of storied history with tornadoes, and in particular with the event that happened there in 2013. And I think that this film is really like, we made it to be culturally important. We made it to kind of move the conversation and shift the needle and get people talking and thinking about how we respond to severe weather, about equity in the response to severe weather, and really kind of the movie's meant to culturally help people. Right. And so I think that, you know, just there's something nice about El Reno being the location where we shot for all of those reasons.
So this is kind of like a severe weather safety film.
I think people will subliminally, you know, I think when you tell people what to do, I mean, I think as we've found just with the recent pandemic, like if you tell people what to do, some people just don't want to do it, or there's a whole, it's hard to reach everyone. And Travis, to our early conversations where we were talking about having, you know, meteorologists working with behavioral psychologists to try to work out how to get people to actually respond properly. And I think fiction and storytelling is so powerful because all of the messaging is in there of what to do and what not to do, so that hopefully by the time the storm hits in the film, people know what they shouldn't. Don't park under the overpass. Don't waste time opening your windows. Get to shelter, get to the lowest, you know, in the center of the house. And so all the people who are doing the wrong things, hopefully the audience reaction is like, oh no, they shouldn't be doing that. And yeah, I hope that we hope that it will provide that safety messaging, but in a way that is subliminal and, you know, you don't realize you're being fed that.
There's a thing called an integrated warning system, and it's all these people that are working together to try to warn people about severe weather, you know, broadcasters, meteorologists, weather service, etc. Billions of dollars spent on weather radar and other systems to try and protect people. And then the last link in that chain is the public, and that's the weakest link. So all these people are working together, spending all this money to try to help people, and then a lot of people just don't connect. They don't respond to how they're supposed to respond. They don't take the action they're supposed to take.
That's exactly, like, that is one of the key motivations to the film. You know, that exact idea, which is to say, we've actually gotten quite good with our warning technology, with our science, but by the time it gets to that last link of the chain that you're talking about, if people don't respond properly, if they don't know to respond properly, if they don't know how, or don't believe it, or you know, then that's where the rest of it doesn't matter. And so to Lindsay's point also, I mean, we hope that people will come out of this film and, you know, when they get a warning on their phone and they're sitting in an Applebee's, they'll remember what Jess and Anna did. Or if they're, you know, out driving, they'll remember what happened to Carlos when he went to the wrong place. You know, all of those kind of stories, we hope will become part of the memory and the response action.
Do you remember in El Reno was a very, very strange event in all kinds of ways, but in 2013, I was up there, and I noticed that some of the major highways that came out of Oklahoma City area, hundreds or thousands of cars leaving the city, evacuating the city of Oklahoma City. And so you're out, you know, 20, 30, 40 miles out in the country away from the metro area, and it's bumper to bumper traffic leaving one direction. Did you guys have that in the movie, or?
We talked about that idea, but ultimately we don't have that exact event. I think, Linz, if I remember correctly, we decided that the messages and the lessons learned by that event, you know, that was you're right, that's such a specific and memorable event for those who know it. But I think that we decided that, you know, people ultimately found themselves taking that course of action because they were, you know, thought the wrong thing or they received the wrong information. And so ultimately, we didn't need to replicate the event. What we needed to do was help kind of reinforce through storytelling the right things and the wrong things. And obviously, so much of that was wrong.
That's
Yeah.
an excellent point, Travis. I think we find that most people out there are just jaded. I mean, they just you know, hear the sirens, then nothing happens from it, and they just dismiss it. It's like the boy who cried wolf. You know, it's just like, okay, we've heard that so many times, but then nothing ever happens. So we see people when the sirens are going off, they're just going their own way and driving and doing whatever. They're not taking cover. They're not trying to do something about it. And so I hope that this movie does really reach the people that get to that point and get into where they need to be safely in a good amount of time that they really can, because like you said, 13 minutes is maybe all you might have to get to that safe place. And I think that's very important that that movie really addresses that. So I'm very excited about seeing it. Love your trailers. I think that they're awesome. And the stars that you have in there just seem to fit perfectly into that kind of town format. So I'm very excited about seeing it, and we're going to make sure that everybody we know goes out and sees it. Actually, a decent movie to see at the movie theater. So I mean, that's awesome. So what do y'all like about, what do you think is the best thing about the movie?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Because the whole thing is its own singular piece from beginning to end.
If you have one part, I mean, sometimes the movie will be excellent, but there's one scene that really gets you or touches you or emotionally is just one of those things you go, this hit the nail. This is what made that movie just speak to you. And it's one thing you always remember about most movies.
You know, for me, I'm going to go right to the end. And it's because that's where all the stories tie up and tie together. You know, again, it's an ensemble. So the beginning of the film, you're introduced to a lot of characters and having to work out how they all connect together and fit. And then they go through this horrific experience. And then you're left wondering, you know, what happens to them in the aftermath? And we track them all the way through. But it's really not until, you know, it's at the end when we sort of have learned what's happened to everybody. And I think there are some surprises at the end, and there are some beautiful moments at the end. And the final image is spectacular. And I hope by that point will leave people, they will realize they have seen something more than just your average disaster film. And I think, and I hope their minds will be full of thought and question and everything, and just be inspired to go and have conversations and talk about what they've just seen or let it percolate over the coming days. So it's really, and it's that finale scene where it always gives me tingles. And, you know, thanks in part to our wonderful composer, Ariel Marks, who just, the score is powerful. And so yeah, I'm going to say the end.
Well, I'm excited. Travis?
I'll speak to the weather community a bit, I think. So there, like Lindsay, I could pick several moments. Some of them are toward the end and it would give too much away, but I will tell you that for me and for the weather community, I think I truly believe this is the most realistic, by a long shot, tornado or severe weather film that's been made. And I think the tornado impact scenes are jaw-dropping, breathtaking in a literal sense. Like you come out of them like, you know. And I will also say, actually, before I get to that, I'll say my favorite moment in the film, one of them is, and it's in the trailer, it's Anna, played by Paz Vega, running along the balcony, slamming on doors, yelling, "Tornado, tornado." And there's something about that scene. I saw the footage after Lindsay shot it, and right after it was shot, before it even had all the visual effects, and it gave me tingles watching it. It's so, there's just something about it that gets me. And then the last thing I will say that's not in any of the trailers, because we're saving it for the theaters, is the aftermath. There's no movie out there that shows, extensive city scale, true to nature tornado aftermath the way that 13 Minutes does. And there's haunting and eerie and amazing moments all through the aftermath sequence as well, that I'm excited for audiences to get into and experience. I think what I love the most is that I think we've really given audiences, like, you guys run Tempest tours, you take people out there to see severe weather. Side note, very first storm chase I ever went on, like many years ago, was with Tempest Tours. I don't know whether you know that. Yeah,
Awesome.
it was. Yeah, Bill Reed might remember, because me and my brother and my sister
I'm
imploded.
Sure, I'm sure
in
Bill
an epic
does. He remembers
way.
everybody.
Yeah, we had a huge fight in Gillette, Wyoming. Me, my brother, and my sister. But anyway, it was a great experience. Yeah, I mean, you take people to see severe weather. We wanted everyone to experience it, and I think this is a real close way to get you there too.
Do y'all have anything else that you would like to mention, or give us information about the film before we close this out?
Go see it. I'm so excited. It feels like when we were making this, of course, through, we were in post-production through the lockdown, and we didn't know what was going to happen, if we would, get to see this film in theaters. And, and we are over the moon that we're going to be, that AMC is our theatrical exhibition partner, that we're going to be bringing it to the big screen. Something we haven't talked about. We've talked a lot about the visuals, but the sound design is incredible, and so much time and effort went into, again, getting the sounds right. And again, we didn't have a huge budget, so sometimes we are borrowing from horror in those moments of terror where you can hear the monster on top of you. For those who are sheltered, you hear that world being destroyed and ripped apart, and it is the thing on top of you. And you need to hear that with a proper sound system. We actually recorded in Atmos, which is the next generation up from 5.1. So, for theaters that have that, if they're able to play beyond 5.1, you've got stuff flying from behind you and coming from the sides and from on top, and all of these phenomenal sounds. So see it in the theater.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this, and we're excited about it, and we're going to get this out to everybody, and hopefully you're going to have a huge turnout. I know that if everybody starts going and posting, this will be in everywhere. You'll be everywhere, internationally and here, and that'll be exciting. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for all of your awesome footage that we see in the film. It was great working with you guys.
Being a good client, and also for making this awesome movie.
And we wouldn't have the beginning and the end that we have, because it sounds you've bookended it with your lightning at the start and Mamatis at the end. So,
all right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you.